It's 7:30 in the evening across India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global, bringing you day's big stories from across India and the world. My colleague Caroline Malone is joining me from Washington, D.C. Caroline, it's good to see you.
Well, good morning, Shubhendu. It's 9 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. and 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, we will go live to Tel Aviv for the latest on the Israel-Hamas conflict. But first, the headlines.
Kenya's President William Ruto and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi hold talks in New Delhi. Kenya shows interest in joining India-led Biofuel Alliance and ISA. US climate envoy John Kerry introduces international nuclear fusion plan at COP28, possible new source of carbon-free energy. Israeli military advances southwards in the Gaza Strip. Qatar presses for comprehensive end to the conflict. Indian Ocean neighbours, India and Kenya, have decided to enhance their maritime and defence relations, apart from strengthening their ties in multiple domains ranging from digital public infrastructure to culture and sports. Bilateral talks were held today in New Delhi between India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Kenya's President William Ruto.
India and Kenya took their bilateral ties up several notches on Tuesday at the end of the delegation-level talks between the two sides in New Delhi. Documents for 5 memorandums of understanding were exchanged in the presence of the leaders of both the countries. Key announcements were also made on enhancing maritime and defense cooperation.
हिंद महासागर से जुड़े हुए देशों के रूप में मैरीटाइम सिक्योरिटी, पायरेसी और ड्रग ट्रैफिकिंग हमारी साझा प्राथमिकता के विषय है। इस महत्वपूर्ण क्षेत्र में आपसी सहयोग को मजबूत करने के लिए हम मैरीटाइम कोऑपरेशन पर जॉइंट विजन स्टेटमेंट जारी कर रहे हैं।
A wide range of ties and issues were covered during the bilateral meet. These include MOU for cooperation in sports, particularly athletics and cricket. MOU for cooperation in the field of digital public infrastructure. Extension of the cultural exchange program from 2023 to 2027. MOU between the Bureau of Indian Standards and its Kenyan counterpart. MOU between the Indian and Kenyan National Open Universities. Kenya's decision to join the International Solar Alliance and Global Biofuel Alliance. Kenya has offered its land to Indian entities for cultivation purposes. Kenya has expressed interest in trade using national currencies. Prime Minister Modi also announced India's decision to provide Kenya with $250 million as line of credit to modernize its agriculture. He said India has prioritized and expanded its ties not only with Kenya but the entire African continent in mission mode during the last 10 years.
Cultural exchange program.
पिछले लगभग एक दशक में हमने मिशन मोड में अफ्रीका के साथ अपना सहयोग बढ़ाया है। मुझे विश्वास है कि राष्ट्रपति रूटो की यात्रा से हमारे द्विपक्षीय संबंधों के साथ साथ पूरे अफ्रीका महाद्वीप के साथ हमारे एंगेजमेंट को नया बल मिलेगा।
Kenyan President William Samoei Ruto appreciated India's efforts in making the African Union a part of the G20 and bolstering the voice of the Global South.
That today, because of Prime Minister Modi's engagement and championship, the African Union is now a member of the G20. I have also congratulated Prime Minister Modi for his leadership in the Global South.
Earlier in the day, the Kenyan president paid homage to the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, at Rajghat Memorial. He was also given a ceremonial reception by President of India, Draupadi Murmu, at Rashtrapati Bhavan, along with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where he also inspected a guard of honor. Amritpal Singh's report. DD India, Delhi.
And with these talks, India-Kenya talks are going to be taken forward. Host of areas in which the conversation took place, including the ways in which the coastal neighbors, the maritime partnership could be taken forward between India and Kenya. The Kenyan leader also mentioned about the manner in which India has played a decisive role in bringing the whole of the African Union on the same platform as developing nations with the membership of the G20 in particular. Meanwhile, DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh joins us live from New Delhi with more updates on this important engagement. Amrit, India, Kenya set to boost ties in a host of areas. What is the potential of partnership in the maritime domain in particular?
That's right, Shubhendu. Today when Prime Minister Modi and President Ruto spoke, they discussed the entire gamut of relationship and a host of areas: agriculture to space, to defense, to trade and investment, to cooperation in culture, people-to-people contact, sports, etc. were discussed. But the key focus of the talks was, of course, maritime cooperation, given that both are, maritime countries. Share the Indian Ocean region and are important countries in the Indian Ocean region. They released a joint vision statement, a document on cooperation and maritime, cooperation, which has, the key elements of boosting maritime trade and industry, advancing maritime security, accelerating connectivity, reinforcing capacity development, improving information sharing. Now, this covers a host of, maritime cooperation issues like increasing the flow of goods and services, partnership in shipbuilding, in dockyard designs, in ship designs, in transfer of technology, in, joint exercises, securing the IOR against piracy, armed robbery, terrorism, illegal fishing, contraband smuggling, illegal human migration, etc. So, this joint vision document very clearly spells out how the two countries look at cooperation in terms of bilateral cooperation, but that having an impact on the Indian Ocean region. Shubhendu?
Amrit, in the broader context, how is India's development engagement with African nations continuing after it helped African Union become a part of the G20?
The African Union, India played a key role in the AU becoming a part of the G20. As you know, India has been taking on the leadership role of the Global South and strengthening the voice of the Global South, be it pushing that on the G20 agenda or hosting the Voice of Global South summits, multiple summits on the Voice of Global South. Given that Kenya is an important member of the African Union, India's engagement, deeper engagement with Kenya and other important countries like from the African region, like South Africa, Tanzania, etc., indicate to the importance India attaches to the African continent, and Kenya being a key player. Now, there are a lot of convergences. One, of course, the Global South agenda, but as President Ruto today said, that their decision to join the Global Fuels Alliance, which is led by India, or joining the International Solar Alliance. So this cooperation with the African nations, especially Kenya, from the perspective of cooperation between India and the African continent and the larger Global South, was a key component of the talks and reflects in the relationship as it's progressing. Shubhendu?
Amrit, thanks very much for joining us with those updates. Moving on, Israeli operations in Gaza continues. My colleague Caroline Malone is in Washington, D.C., gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Caroline, the latest is that the Israeli military operation is moving southwards on the Gaza Strip.
Well, that's right. It's now been 4 days since a temporary ceasefire between Israel and Gaza lapsed, and the Israeli military is now advancing south in the Gaza Strip. In what appeared to be the biggest ground assault since a truce collapsed last week, residents say Israeli tanks had entered the eastern parts of Khan Yunis for the first time, crossing from the Israeli border and advancing west. An Israeli government spokesperson said they expect a difficult fighting in the new phase of war in Gaza, but are open to constructive feedback on minimizing harm to civilians. Well, the Israeli army spokesperson Daniel Hagari said that Hamas deliberately embeds itself among civilians so that Gazans bear the consequences of Hamas's atrocities.
New phase in our war against Hamas. Hamas broke the humanitarian pause when it violated the hostage release agreement by refusing to release women, children, and babies as agreed. Hamas also fired rockets at Israeli homes. It should be clear to everyone by now, Hamas chooses war. It has been 8 weeks since October 7th and Hamas is still holding 137 of our people hostage, babies, the elderly, women and men. Hamas does not value human life.
Well, Qatar is pressing for a comprehensive end to the conflict and is working to repair a collapsed truce agreement between Israel and Hamas. The Qatari Prime Minister said they are constantly working to alleviate the burden for Gazans. Well, during the truce, Hamas released dozens of hostages held in Gaza in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, and Israel allowed humanitarian aid to flow into the coastal enclave. Gulf leaders are in Doha to attend the annual Gulf Cooperation Council Summit. During the meeting, Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani called the United Nations Security Council to force Israel to return to the negotiating table in its conflict with Hamas. Well, Qatar has been acting as the key mediator between Israel and Hamas since the conflict started on October 7th. Well, we can now go live to Tel Aviv, where our correspondent Sarah Coates is joining us. Sarah, we've been hearing about the latest from the Israel Defense Forces. What more can you tell us about what they're saying?
Hi, Caroline. Well, look, the IDF says it is now operating inside Khan Yunis. This is down in the south of the Gaza Strip and was home to around 450,000 people. They are now being told to flee further south down toward Rafah. And this was just a few hours ago, an area that the military said would be safe, would not be bombed for just a short period to allow more aid in. But look, according to aid groups, the situation inside the Gaza Strip is catastrophic. They say it's growing worse by the minute. We do understand that only a small number of aid trucks have made it through that crossing today. And just to put that into perspective, on a normal day before any of this happened, there would be at least 500 trucks going through that Rafah border crossing. Now, people down in the south of the Gaza Strip say that they have simply nothing to eat. They don't have anything to keep them warm. And we do know hospitals down in the south, they are absolutely overflowing. Doctors say they simply cannot decide who to treat and who to turn away. So look, it certainly is a very rapidly deteriorating situation. And the IDF has just posted on its Twitter telling people not to use the Salah al-Din road, that is the road heading from the north to the south of the Gaza Strip, with heavy fighting reportedly taking place there. But look, Caroline, just to bring you up to speed with what's actually happening on the ground here in Israel, there's just been a massive barrage of rockets sent right over the centre of the country, a number of huge explosions in the sky above me. And we can tell you now that one of those rockets directly hit a school, with that rocket landing in a classroom. Thankfully, those children had been rushed to a safe room. A number of people have been injured here in Tel Aviv and also further south down in Ashkelon, which is fairly close to the Gaza border. Caroline.
Well, it sounds like a fierce fighting is ongoing there, Sarah. How about the situation for the hostages? I understand Israel's holding a war cabinet meeting right now. Have they got plans for the hostages?
Look, you're certainly right. That is expected to wrap up at any moment now. But let me tell you, these families of the 137 people who do remain inside the Gaza Strip, these people are absolutely furious. They say they are disgusted with the government, and they say it has to do more to bring these people home, whatever the cost. Now, some of your viewers might remember this prisoner swap, hostage swap deal that happened back in 2011. That was with one Israeli soldier. Israel swapped more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners for this one person. And these families are asking why Israel is not doing the same now, given that there are so many people in the Strip and they've been there now for 300 days. Now, these families are telling the War Cabinet that if it doesn't step in and try to do everything it can to get these people back, then it will go higher. It says it will go to an international body, not disclosing which one at this hour. But look, we are expecting potentially a statement from this meeting in the coming hours. And just finally, Caroline, there is a lot of concern here in Israel. There was a report published in the Wall Street Journal a little earlier today that Israel is now mulling a plan to potentially flood these tunnels that run right under the Gaza Strip with seawater from the Mediterranean to try and flush out any Hamas fighters that might be hiding in there. But these families are highly concerned that if their loved ones are being held down in these tunnels, that they may actually be drowned instead. So certainly a lot of anger and a lot of worry here on the ground today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to Sarah Coates. They're reporting for us live from Tel Aviv. Well, moving on now, the UK Ministry of Defence has confirmed it will carry out surveillance flights over the eastern Mediterranean, which includes operating in the airspace above Israel and Gaza. These unarmed aircraft will not engage in combat and will be tasked with locating hostages and getting information to the relevant authorities. Well, the British Home Secretary James Cleverly is in Rwanda to finalise a new treaty for the deportation of asylum seekers, following the UK's top court ruling that the previous scheme on it was unlawful. Well, Cleverly is set to meet Rwanda's foreign minister to formally sign the new agreement. Well, under this arrangement, the UK plans to send thousands of asylum seekers with an initial payment of $180 million made to Rwanda and a commitment for more funding to support those deported. Well, France is hosting a finance-focused summit on climate and growth, bringing together scientific and economic experts to address the challenges in keeping the commitments of the Paris 2015 climate agreement. Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, who was speaking at the summit, said no country was going as fast as it could in developing and innovating renewable solutions to the climate crisis. Well, DD India's Ross Cullen sent us this report from the summit in Paris.
Well, I'm here at the conference centre in the French Ministry of Finance for this year's event, the Rendezvous de Bercy. It takes place every 2 years, and they focus on different aspects related to the French economy, the European economy, and the wider world economy. And this year it was all about growth and climate. We had the lead speakers in the morning of Tuesday, Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, here addressing attendees and delegates at the summit, saying that we are behind on our short-term goals in terms of achieving innovative solutions to the climate crisis. He also said, as rich countries, we owe it to developing countries to try to drive down the costs of green technologies and implementing the green transition. He mentioned the role of AI, particularly in weather forecasting, new data for farmers in developing countries about crops and seeds. And he also did say that we are not going as fast as possible. He said no country is going as quickly as possible in terms of implementing innovative solutions to try to increase the use of renewable energies in their economies, for example. Bruno Le Maire, the French finance minister, the host of this year's event, also spoke, saying that France alone spends some 60 to 70 billion euros a year on the green transition, saying there needs to be more of a shouldering of those costs. The burden needs to be spread not just on the public sector and on consumers, but also calling on the private sector to take their share of the load and actually use the climate crisis as an opportunity for that sector to drive more innovative solutions and come up with more technologies. This event takes place every 2 years. We have previous summits in 2017 and 2019. And so the next event, the next Rendezvous de Bercy, will take place in 2025. In Paris, Ross Cullen reporting for DD India.
Well, at least 2 people were killed in a Russian attack on the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson. Russian air defense forces said they intercepted and destroyed scores of Ukrainian drones over Russian territory. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian army said it shot down 10 of 17 Russian drones launched overnight and also accused Russia of firing missiles at civilian areas. Well, meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will address the US Senate later today. Zelensky and top aides to US President Joe Biden will make their case to senators about why a fresh infusion of military assistance is needed to help Ukraine repel the Russian invaders. Well, Biden's administration earlier asked Congress for nearly $106 billion to pay for ambitious plans for Ukraine and other security initiatives, but it hasn't yet been approved. Well, President Vladimir Putin will visit Saudi Arabia and the UAE on Wednesday as Moscow's court allies abroad amid some isolation over the Ukraine conflict. Well, the Russian President Putin will also host Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi in Moscow this week. The Kremlin said the Russian president would discuss bilateral ties, the Israel-Hamas conflict, energy and regional politics. Well, since the beginning of 2023, the United States has had 38 mass shootings, taking the number of people who have died to 197. That's the highest death toll since 2006. A report from a mass killing database compiled by USA Today, the Associated Press and Northeastern University emphasized the country has reached a distressing milestone in the yearly count of mass shootings. US experts in criminology have stated an increase in mass shootings has raised concern about the easy access to guns in the country. Well, that's all from me here in Washington. Back to you, Shubendu, in Delhi.
Caroline, appreciate you joining us with those updates. And still to come on DD India Global. Coastal state of Andhra Pradesh on high alert as cyclone Meghjom makes landfall.
Do you know that every year hundreds of thousands of Indian students go abroad to pursue higher education? But now India has opened its doors for foreign higher educational institutions who can set up and operate their campuses here.
Bringing these foreign university campuses will provide an additional opportunity to our students to study in foreign universities while staying in India.
How will you ensure that only the best universities come to India?
They should be within the top 500 ranks in the global rankings, although we have not specified any global ranking agency, but in general, or subject-wise, they should be within the 500 global rankings.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. US Special Climate Envoy John Kerry introduced an international engagement strategy to make nuclear fusion a new source of carbon-free energy. Speaking at the COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai, Kerry said this technology could be, and I quote, vital component of the world's energy landscape and could replace the need for fossil fuels like coal, oil and gas. Kerry outlined that the plan involves 35 nations and centers on research and development, supply chain matters and regulatory aspects. The International Trade Center at COP28 addressed critical issues concerning small businesses and climate action at COP28 in Dubai. Speaking on behalf of the organization, Executive Director Pamela Coke-Hamilton outlined the challenges faced by small businesses.
And our primary objective here is to amplify the voice of small businesses. We need to look at what the small businesses need to make the adjustment. One of the greatest challenges is not so much the fact that they don't want to. It is that 70% of them have acknowledged that they know they need to, but less than 40%, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, say that they can't. And so we have to be able to bridge that gap.
Andhra Pradesh, the coastal state in southern India, is on high alert as cyclone Migjom makes landfall, leading to a red alert in the state and surrounding regions. Cyclone Migjom struck Andhra's Bhatla as the severe cyclonic storm, boasting a maximum speed of 100 kilometers per hour. A red alert has been issued by the state government for multiple districts, including West Godavari, Eluru, Krishna, Bhatla and Guntur. Responding to the crisis, authorities have established over 300 relief camps to accommodate those evacuated from low-lying areas. The India Met Department has issued a warning indicating that coastal areas of the state will experience extremely heavy rainfall. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Rescue personnel and ambulances arrive at the site of an apparent explosion in Pakistan's Peshawar on Tuesday. At least 4 children and an adult were injured in the blast. 2 of the children are in critical condition. Nobody has claimed responsibility for the attack as yet. Divers from Danish Defence Force safely detonated a 130-kilogram deep-water bomb off the coast of Langeland Island in southern Denmark. A World War II bomb was discovered in a fisherman's net south of the island. At least 23 people have been found dead after the eruption of Merapi volcano in western Indonesia. 3 survivors were found in Indonesia after Merapi volcano erupted in West Sumatra. Whipsnade Zoo in England is spreading Christmas joy by concealing tasty treats for meerkats. This creative approach aims to engage meerkats' natural curiosity and encourage their digging skills. The zoo, housing some 11,000 animals, is the largest zoo in the UK. What fun for the animals. That's all in this edition of DD India Global. Do join us again tomorrow at 5 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. IST. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, Twitter and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global. Namaskar.